Welcome to Quickcasters, your one-stop shop for getting up to speed on the things that really matter.
That's right.
And today, we're diving headfirst into the 2024 U.S. elections.
Big one this year.
Now, no matter where you're tuning in from, this election, it matters. What happens in the U.S.
Oh, it echoes.
echoes around the world.
Yeah.
So whether you're a political junkie or just trying to stay informed,
We got you covered.
get ready for some eye-opening insights. We've got the lowdown on the candidates, the key issues, and some unexpected twists
Oh, yeah.
that might just surprise you. And if you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button and that little bell icon so you don't miss out on future deep dives.
We go deep.
Okay, let's kick things off with foreign policy.
Yeah.
Usually, U.S. foreign policy
Stays pretty consistent.
stays pretty consistent no matter who's in the White House. But this time around, things feel different.
A little bit.
We've got Donald Trump back on the scene, pushing his America First agenda, while Kamala Harris is sticking to a more traditional, globally minded approach.
Yeah, two different personalities for sure.
And this clash of styles leads to some really interesting differences. When we look at specific global hotspots,
That's right.
for example, let's take the war in Ukraine. Harris is all in
Yeah.
on supporting Ukraine, backing NATO all the way,
Yeah.
and believes the U.S. needs to stay in the driver's seat when it comes to supporting democracies around the world.
Strong stance.
But Trump, he's singing a different tune.
Oh, yeah.
He's questioning how much this is all costing American taxpayers, pointing out that other NATO members aren't pulling their weight. And he's even hinted that he could broker a peace deal with Russia.
In a snap.
Now here's where things get really interesting. The Middle East, you'd think there'd be a huge gap between the candidates on this one, right?
You would think. Right.
But surprisingly, they both seem to be on the same page when it comes to backing Israel.
Yeah, interesting.
This might come as a shock, especially given Harris's promises on the campaign trail about prioritizing human rights for Palestinians.
Well, a lot of people surprised by that.
This unexpected agreement makes you wonder, doesn't it? Do campaign promises really translate into actual policies?
Makes you think.
It's something to keep in mind as we dig deeper. And while they might see eye to eye on Israel, their stances on China are a whole other story.
Night and day.
Harris acknowledges that the U.S. needs to work with China, especially on big global problems, like climate change, even while criticizing their trade practices.
Makes sense.
Trump, though, he's going for a more aggressive approach, talking about slapping even more tariffs on Chinese goods.
Oh, yeah. He loves those tariffs.
And you know those different approaches have massive implications, not just for the U.S. economy, but for the whole global landscape. Trump's tariffs could crank up those trade tensions even more, and American consumers might end up feeling the pinch. On the other hand, Harris's focus on collaboration could bring some stability, but maybe at the cost of having to make concessions on thorny issues like human rights. What do you think about that?
Tough choices.
We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And speaking of the economy, that's where we see another clear distinction between the two. Trump's big play is all about tax cuts, slashing regulations, particularly in the energy sector, and doubling down on those tariffs we just talked about. Harris, meanwhile, is taking a page from Biden's playbook, pushing for major investments in infrastructure and green energy.
Big government versus small government. The classic debate.
If you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, Trump's economic strategy is all about giving businesses a boost and appealing to the middle class with promises of lighter taxes and more opportunities in areas that have been struggling. However, his deregulation policies, especially when it comes to energy,
A lot of people worried about that.
have a lot of people worried about the potential damage to the environment. And how does Harris plan to pay for all those ambitious infrastructure projects and housing initiatives? Well, she's saying she'll raise taxes on high earners and corporations, which, let's be honest,
A popular move.
isn't exactly a common move in American politics. It'll be fascinating to see how that resonates with voters.
Definitely will.
And now let's turn our attention to an issue that's on everyone's mind: climate change. We're bombarded with headlines about it every day. But what do the candidates' plans actually mean when it comes to taking action?
Yeah, we gotta cut through the noise.
Well, Harris has made it clear that she's all in on cutting carbon emissions, and she sees this as carrying the torch from Biden's policies. But here's the thing, she's also got a history of taking on the oil and gas industry, even going so far as to sue them for environmental violations. Could this be a sign that she'll take a more aggressive stance on climate action if she becomes president?
Could be.
That's a great question. And in stark contrast, we have Trump, who hasn't exactly been shy about his support for fossil fuels.
Nope.
He's even vowed to pull the U.S. out of the Paris Agreement again and crank up oil, gas, and coal production. It's hard to imagine two more different approaches.
Polar opposites.
And now let's tackle another hot-button issue: immigration. It's a topic that always seems to spark heated debates. But you might be surprised to find some common ground between the candidates when it comes to what they actually do, rather than what they say.
Actions speak louder than words, right?
Trump, as you might expect, is taking a hard line on immigration. We're talking mass deportations, ending birthright citizenship, and putting severe limits on asylum. But the question is, how much of this is actually doable? He made similar promises during his first term, and the results were, shall we say, mixed.
Very mixed.
And Harris, while campaigning on creating a path to citizenship for undocumented immigrants, has a record that tells a different story.
Interesting.
Over 1 million deportations have happened under the Biden-Harris administration. It's a real disconnect between the rhetoric and the reality. And it's something to watch closely.
For sure.
It definitely raises some interesting questions. Are the differences between the candidates on immigration more about style than substance? Are their actions ultimately more similar than their words might lead us to believe?
It makes you think.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it?
It really does. It certainly does. And now, we come to what could be called the battleground of values: healthcare and social issues.
Yeah, this is where it gets personal for a lot of voters.
This is where the candidates' core beliefs really collide.
Let's start with healthcare. Trump spent a good chunk of his presidency trying to dismantle the Affordable Care Act,
Right.
while Harris is all about expanding it, making access to affordable quality healthcare a cornerstone of her campaign.
Two very different visions.
It's like they're speaking two completely different languages. Trump's vision for healthcare is rooted in individual choice and a smaller role for the government. Harris, on the other hand, sees healthcare as a right, not a privilege, and believes the government has a duty to make sure all Americans can get the care they need.
Yeah, and that difference in philosophy spills over into other areas too, like abortion,
Oh, absolutely.
which is shaping up to be one of the most defining issues of this election. Harris has been a fierce advocate for reproductive rights, even making history as the first sitting vice president to visit a Planned Parenthood clinic.
That was a powerful moment, wasn't it?
It really was. It really underscored how important this issue is to Harris and to many voters across the country.
Absolutely. And then you have Trump, who has consistently opposed abortion and worked to restrict access to abortion services during his time in office.
Right.
It's a clear line in the sand between the two candidates.
And one that's likely to galvanize voters on both sides of the issue. We're also seeing a stark divide on the question of guns, with Trump standing firm as a defender of the Second Amendment, while Harris is calling for tougher gun control measures.
It's a debate that's been raging in America for decades,
Oh, yeah.
and it shows no signs of fading away, especially in light of the tragic mass shootings we've seen recently.
What's interesting here is that both candidates are tapping into deeply held beliefs about freedom, safety, and the role of government.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not just about guns, it's about the kind of society we want to live in.
And that leads us to another crucial area: education. It's the foundation for a strong and thriving nation. But the candidates have very different ideas about the best way to support it.
Yeah, education is always a hot topic.
Trump is a big believer in school choice, pushing for vouchers that would allow parents to send their kids to private or religious schools. He sees this as a way to empower parents and give them more options, particularly in areas where public schools are struggling. Harris, on the other hand, is all about investing in public education and making college more affordable. She's even proposed making public colleges tuition-free for families with lower incomes.
So it's a classic debate between those who favor market-based solutions and those who believe in a stronger role for government in providing essential services.
Absolutely. And that debate extends beyond education. We're seeing it play out in the tech world, too, especially when it comes to how to regulate big tech companies.
Yeah, big tech is a huge issue these days.
Harris is worried about data privacy and wants to make sure that artificial intelligence is developed and used ethically. She believes we need stronger regulations to protect consumers and promote responsible innovation.
Right.
Trump, however, has zeroed in on Section 230 reform, arguing that social media platforms should be held accountable for the content they host. He's also accused these platforms of censoring conservative voices.
It's a complex issue with huge implications for free speech, innovation, and the future of the internet.
And as technology keeps advancing at lightning speed, these issues are only going to become more critical.
Absolutely. We're witnessing a real clash of values when it comes to how to balance innovation with responsibility and how to safeguard individual rights in the digital age.
It's a lot to process, but it's vital that we understand these issues because they are shaping the world we live in. And now, we need to turn our attention to America's role on the global stage. This election could have a seismic impact on international affairs, and it's essential to grasp where the candidates stand on key foreign policy issues.
You're absolutely right. Let's dive into that, starting with the ongoing war in Ukraine.
Yeah, the war in Ukraine has really shaken things up.
It's a conflict that has shaken the global order to its core and raised profound questions about America's commitment to its allies.
Harris has taken a firm stance in support of Ukraine, advocating for continued military and economic aid. She's also a staunch believer in the importance of NATO and has vowed to maintain a strong U.S. presence in Europe. Trump, on the other hand, has been much more critical of U.S. involvement in the conflict.
Yeah.
He's questioned the cost of aid to Ukraine and has suggested that European countries should shoulder more responsibility for supporting their neighbor. He's also made comments expressing admiration for Vladimir Putin, which has fueled concerns about his willingness to stand up to Russian aggression.
It's a striking contrast in approaches, reflecting a fundamental difference in how they view America's role in the world. Harris sees the U.S. as a global leader, a champion of democracy and human rights. She believes in working collaboratively with allies to tackle shared challenges. Trump, however, embraces an America-first philosophy. He's skeptical of international organizations and alliances, believing the U.S. should prioritize its own interests above all else.
And this clashing worldview extends to their perspectives on other foreign policy challenges as well, such as the rise of China.
Absolutely.
Harris acknowledges China as a competitor, but also recognizes the need for cooperation on issues like climate change and global health. She advocates for engaging with China diplomatically while firmly defending U.S. interests.
Makes sense.
Trump, though, has adopted a far more confrontational approach. He's imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, accusing China of unfair trade practices and intellectual property theft. He's also been a vocal critic of China's human rights record.
So this relationship between the U.S. and China has grown increasingly tense in recent years. Regardless of who wins the election, it will undoubtedly remain a focal point of U.S. foreign policy.
Absolutely. The candidates also bring differing perspectives to the Middle East, a region plagued by conflict and instability for decades.
Yeah, the Middle East is always a tough one.
Harris has expressed support for a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and called for a more balanced approach to the region. Trump, conversely, has been unwavering in his support for Israel. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He also brokered peace agreements between Israel and several Arab countries, a move that has drawn both praise and criticism.
So the Middle East is a complex and multifaceted region with no easy solutions. However, it's clear that the two candidates harbor very different visions for America's role there.
And those contrasting visions have the power to shape the future of the region in profound ways. As we approach the election, it's vital to consider not just the candidates' domestic policies, but also their stances on foreign policy.
The decisions we make in November will reverberate far beyond our borders. It's a choice that will touch the lives of people around the world.
We need to approach this decision with careful thought and a deep understanding of what's at stake.
It really is a pivotal moment. We can get so caught up, in the daily headlines and the back and forth of the campaigns that we lose sight of the bigger picture.
Easy to do, too.
But that's what we've tried to do in this deep dive. Step back and give you the broader perspective.
Exactly. We're not here to tell you who to vote for, but we do want to equip you with the knowledge you need to make an informed decision.
Right.
About the kind of future we want to create together. And that future hinges on a lot of things.
Oh, yeah.
Well, one of the biggest is the relationship between the U.S. and the rest of the world.
The decisions made in the Oval Office, they have a ripple effect that reaches every corner of the globe.
It's a big deal.
So it's crucial to understand where these candidates stand on issues like global trade, climate change, and international cooperation.
And let's not forget about the war in Ukraine.
Oh, absolutely not.
This conflict has already had a profound impact on the world.
For sure.
And the outcome could reshape the landscape of global security for years to come.
It's a stark reminder that we live in an interconnected world.
Yeah.
And that the choices made by one nation can have far-reaching consequences.
So as we head towards November, Remember that this election isn't just about domestic politics.
Yep.
It's about America's place in the world
Yeah.
and its responsibility to tackle global challenges.
It's about choosing a leader who can navigate the complexities of the 21st century
Right.
and work with other nations to build a more peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable future.
It's a lot to ponder.
It is.
But these are the conversations we need to be having
Right now.
right now.
Yeah.
So if you're watching us on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button
Yeah.
and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of our future deep dives.
We appreciate it.
And be sure to click that notification bell so you're alerted whenever we drop a new episode.
With a new episode.
We're always exploring new topics and bringing you insightful analysis.
The best
So
analysis.
stay curious, stay informed,
Stay engaged.
and stay engaged. That's a wrap on our 2024 U.S. Elections special. Thanks for joining us on this Quickcasters Deep Dive.
We appreciate you listening.
We'll see you next time.